Good morning, teachers and students. I'm Melody Corredera, and the subject of today's newscast is joints. Joints is a site where two or more bones meet together, and they have two main functions, which is to give our skeleton movement and to hold our skeleton together. Fun fact, joints are actually the weakest part of our skeleton, yet they resist various forces such as crushing or stretching that may force them out of alignment. Now we're going to pan to our screen, which will show you how joints are classified. Joints are classified by structure and function. The structural classification focuses on the material binding of the bones together and whether or not a joint cavity is present. Structurally, there are fibrous, cartilaginous, and synovial joints. The functional classification is based on the amount of movement allowed in the joint, and the different types of movement include immovable, slightly movable, and freely movable. Now that you know the basics about the joints, let's go into our next segment, a closer look about joint prosthetics. Now, these date back to the 1940s and 50s as a solution to solve the need for limb replacements and also due to degenerative diseases and an increasing number of injured war veterans. Here we can see the first successful transplant, which was a total hip replacement attempted in 1963 by John Charnley, an orthopedic surgeon. His device consisted of a metal ball and a stem in a cup-shaped polyethanol plastic socket anchored to the pelvis by methyl methacrylate cement. And this is the foundation used for all prosthetics today, and over time, with the help of computers and other medical advancements, we have made this prosthetics way more effective and much safer. Now that you know about joint prosthetics, let's go to Stephanie Granado's detailed insight about the types of joints.
Stephanie, as mentioned previously, there are fibrous, cartilaginous, and synovial joints. Let's dive deeper into synovial joints and their types based on shape. Synovial joints are the joints in which the articulating bones are separated by a fluid which is held through a joint cavity. They allow free movement in bones.
The general structure of synovial joints consists of many different parts. One of those parts being the articular cartilage, which prevents bones from being crushed. Then there's the joint cavity. This is where the synovial fluid is located. Then there's the articular capsule. This encloses the joint cavity. There's two parts of the capsule, which are the fibrous capsule that is tough and strengthens joints so the bones aren't pulled apart, and it lies externally. Then there's the synovial membrane, which lies inside and contains loose connective tissue. Inside the joint cavity is the synovial fluid that comes from the filtration of blood flowing through the capillaries in the synovial membrane. It is white and it reduces friction between the cartilages. Up next are the reinforcing ligaments, them being the capsular and intrinsic ligaments. They are the thickened parts of the fibrous capsule, and the extra and intracapsular ligaments, they lie outside of the fibrous capsule. Those who are considered to be double jointed, their joint capsules/ligaments are more stretchy and loose than the average. And lastly, the ones that help the synovial fluid be produced are the blood vessels, and they are accompanied by the nerves, which help detect pain.
Some additional features that aren't part of the synovial joints but are associated with them are the bursa and the tendon sheaths. They basically help reduce friction where ligaments, muscles, skin, tendons, or bones rub together, and they're basically bags of lubricant.
Finalizing synovial joints, there are different types based on their given shapes. First one being plane joints. They have articular surfaces that are flat and only allow non-axial gliding movements. Hinge joints form when a cylindrical end of one bone fits into a trough-shaped surface of another bone. Their motion is like a mechanical hinge. Pivot joints are formed when a rounded end of one bone conforms to a bone sleeve. The only movement allowed here is a uniaxial rotation. Condyloid joints form when an oval articular surface fits into a depression of another bone. All angular movements are allowed here. Saddle joints are similar to condylar joints but have a greater range of movement. And the articular surfaces here have a concave and convex area. Ball and socket joints form when a spherical head of one bone articulates with the cup socket of another bone. They are multi-axial and they have the most range of movement. Knee joints are the most complex of all the joints. They affect how the femur and tibia interact with each other by not allowing the femur rock side to side with the tibia. And they have 3 main ligaments running down it. They also have interluded bind alleyways, which are also complex on its own. Shoulder joints don't have a lot of stability, but they're the most free moving. They have a ball and socket joint, and they have a rotator cuff and 2 ligaments. Elbow joints allow upper limbs to have flexible extensions and flexions. They have 3 ligaments as well. Hip joints have an acetabular labrum that doesn't allow hip dislocations. They're the second most freely moving joints. They also have a ball and socket joint and have 4 ligaments. Lastly, the jaw joints lie anteriorly to the ear. There's 3 types of movement that go on here: the opening of the mouth, the closing of the mouth, and the opening wide of the mouth.
And that's all there is to synovial joints and their different types. Up next, we have our last segment where Olivia Santamarina will be presenting the various types of diseases.
Thank you, Jaylene. And for our last topic, we'll discuss how diseases and traumatic injuries impact the joints. Fun fact, we only pay attention to our joints when we feel something wrong with them. Most of the pain associated with joints comes with traumatic injuries and inflammatory or degenerative diseases. Common traumatic injuries include sprains, dislocations, and cartilage tears. The first injury we will be discussing is sprains. In a sprain, the ligaments reinforcing the joint are either stretched or torn. Lumbar region of the spine, the ankle, and the knee are the most common sprain sites. Most of the time they heal by themselves, but it may take a period of time. The next injury we're going to discuss is dislocations. Dislocations occur when the bone is forced out of alignment. They usually occur in the jaw, shoulder, and fingers, and usually derives from serious falls. They are fixed by being placed back into their original position by a physician. The last injury we'll be talking about is cartilage tears. Cartilage tears occur when the meniscus is subjected to a lot of compression and stress at the same time. The cartilage is avascular, therefore meaning it is going to stay torn. So they recommend that the cartilage be removed with an arthroscopic surgery. Now that we got all the injuries out of the way, the 2 diseases that we will discuss is bursitis and tendonitis, which fall under the inflammatory disease category. The first disease that we're going to speak about is bursitis, which is the inflammation of the bursa, usually caused by a blow or friction. Usually the injured area will be treated with anti-inflammatory drugs or will require fluid removal in the inflamed areas. The last disease is tendonitis, which is the inflammation of the tendon sheath. This is usually caused by overuse. Tendonitis is treated by rest, ice, and anti-inflammatory drugs similar to bursitis. This is all that we have for our newscast on joints. I hope you all enjoyed. This has been Olivia Santamarina from Moss News, signing off.